down here tonight. We appreciate you guys taking the time out to join us, and so we can share with you the information on our water reduction plan, what it is, why we're doing it, and how we're implementing it. So appreciate you guys' time. We're gonna go over a little bit about the drought real quickly, so you guys have paint the landscape. You guys have a good understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. We'll talk about our new our water reduction plan and what those restrictions are. And we're going to talk then about some of the programs, the incentive programs to help homeowners and HOAs try and implement water conservation to meet our water reduction plan. And then lastly, we'll spend a few minutes to talk about the defensible space between the urban wildland interface that we want to maintain. So we have today I'm Mike Moore. I'm with the Anaheim Public Utilities Department. I work in the Water Department. And we have Deputy Fire Marshal Alan Hogue here also to help answer questions if we have on landscaping around the house in that interface. Moore. Michael Moore, right? And so the information that we're going to present here today on a water reduction plan, there's lots of different information. We'll give you some after the meeting. There's more information on our website, and we'll also give you contact information for any specific questions. Also with us today, we have two of our water conservation specialists. We have John and Dennis. You guys raise your hand. They're the ones who are going to be out in the community, working with homeowners, with HOAs, and trying to get them to meet our water reduction plan and manage that with them. So you may be interfaced with Dennis and John here. The drought that we're in, as everyone has heard, it's been in the newspaper every day now. This is a historic 4-year drought. It didn't just sneak up on us. It's been something we've been watching over the last 4 years get worse and worse and worse. And as you can see now by this map of California, where the dark brown is the exceptional drought condition, that's the worst drought condition you can have as we monitor that. And you can see that 44% of the state is now covered in the exceptional drought, and the entire state is in some stage of drought, including Southern California and the Central Valley. And one thing to note is that area in the northeast part of the state, the Northern Sierras, why I highlighted that, because that is an important part of our watershed where we rely on snowpack during the winter to then drain and fill 3 reservoirs that we have up in that area during this time of year. Because we've gotten historic snowpack, those reservoirs that we rely on to import water here to us here in Anaheim has diminished greatly. This is what the snowpack looks like in the Northern Sierras. Typically, you see for the last 4 years how low as a percentage of normal the snowpack normally is. And this last year, this winter here, where it's only been 6% of normal for our snowpack. So that means we have very little water filling the reservoirs, those 3 reservoirs I mentioned to you up around Sacramento, that we rely on to store water to bring down here to us in the summer. This is in April of each year, we go out in the Department of Water Resources, the state of California, measures the depth of snowpack up in the Sierras. And this is what it looks like in a normal year, in April 2010. This is what it looked like April 2015. You see there's no snow up in that area. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. The drought has gotten worse, and this is a historic drought. So on April 1st, the governor came out with an executive order that mandated statewide urban areas must cut back on a whole 25% of their normal water usage compared to 2013. And they must stop doing other things, such as no more watering turf and medians, and came out with that proclamation. And the state of California then rolled those regulations out to us here in the municipal water agencies. And if we don't comply with those, we can be faced with fines up to $10,000 a day. So we've seen on the state level, the governor with the state water board, with their mandates. On a regional level, where we get water from is Metropolitan Water District, where we import water and we bring it up to the water treatment plant up here in the Walnut Canyon treatment plant up above the golf course. They're restricting our water flows too. They've gone into a level 3 reduction plan, which has cut our imported water supply by 15%. And then the third water agency that's also cut back to us locally is our groundwater, where we get a lot of almost 2/3 of our water from. and we've also been cut back by the Orange County Orange County Water District to cut back 425 million gallons this year on how much water we normally pump. So we're seeing reductions from all three of our water supplies sources. And we're faced, as the top one says, with penalties of $10,000 per day if we don't comply with those.
Is that the city? The city is fined?
The city could be fined $10,000 per day. Correct. No, we don't. And I'll explain our groundwater system in a little bit. The groundwater basin that we sit over is, we have our wells, is managed. The water is for everyone, but it's managed by the county, by the Orange County Water District. So we don't own the water that goes in there. We pump out of the water. We're allowed to pump a certain percentage. And all those restrictions, all those sources of water that we have are all being cut back this year. For the first time, we've seen a cutback in all three of our water sources. The water use in Anaheim over the last 10 years, you can see in about 2006, 2007, we peaked on our annual water demand as a city as a whole to about 77,000 acre feet in that year. And since then, we've declined. We've declined a large part because of the water conservation efforts that we've done inside of buildings, toilets, toilet rebate programs, shower heads, working with commercial users. And we've seen a steady decline. And also, as the economy was bad during the recession, we saw less tourism. So we saw a good decline as our demand dropped down to 65,000 acre feet per year. Then we saw it picking back up. And then as we ramped up our water conservation efforts again, and our outreach campaign again, we've seen our overall water demand decline. And this is to note, even though the population and the tourism as a whole in the city has been increasing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is this possible to get the slideshow either posted on the website or emailed to us?
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, we can get this posted. There's the same presentation we gave to the city council. We'll be able to get this posted on our website. Yes, yeah. It's a good suggestion.
Yes. Question, what is our base that this reduction is going to be based on?
Good question. So let me get to one more slide, and then we'll talk a little bit about demand. And can everyone see the slideshow? I know we got some people over here. We can move some more chairs over here if you can't see. So this is our annual, or the average per person water usage in the city over the last 10 years. And so you can see where we used to use over 110 gallons per person per day for residential, we've significantly dropped that off over the last couple of years, primarily due to water conservation, awareness, to now where we're at 91 gallons per person per day on average in the city, which is very good. You can see the state average is above 100 gallons per person per day. So because when the state came out with their mandates, remember on the earlier slide, I mentioned that on an average they want to save 25% from the baseline of 2013. Because we've already done significant water conservation here in the city of Anaheim, our reduction percentage that's mandated to us from the state is only 20% instead of 25%. So that's our baseline for our city, is a 20% reduction compared to our 2013 reduction. And starts in June 1 through February 28 is what they're measuring us, how we're doing on our conservation. Are we going to reduce 20% from that same time period in 2013?
Does that mean it's going to be reduced more than the 90%, than the 91? They want us to reduce it more than 91
yes,
gallons? They
yeah.
want us to bring it down to 71 gallons.
The goal is 55 gallons per person per day.
Wow.
That's what the governor has said he would like, where the target is for per person water usage, which is a tall order when you live in areas like here where we have large front yards, swimming pools. And so we're doing our best. We're focused on 20% reduction by the end of February of 2016 is what we're focused on, getting that 20% reduction. So we've come up with measures to achieve that goal. That's our goal. And if this drought continues, if this drought continues through next winter, and we have another dry year, we're going to be carrying this on again. If we get a good big snowpack and we get out and we start pulling out this drought, we will probably pull that back, that restriction, as the state pulls those restrictions back on us. Any questions on where we're at, where our water sources come from? Yes.
Yeah, I think, I don't think people are missing this. I think the city should be commended because they've been doing a lot of work ahead of time to get it down. I think you should be commended for it.
Thank you. One thing I did go over, and you asked a question earlier, is I assume, is where our water comes from. We get water from really two sources of supply. We get imported water that we get that comes along the other side of the freeway. We buy and we purchase that water that's imported from the Colorado River and from Northern California. That's the one source. The other source of water is the groundwater. As you mentioned, we have underneath us, not necessarily here, but further to the west, we have groundwater wells that pump water. You know, the lakes, Anaheim lakes, that's where us and all the other agencies in North Orange County percolate water into the groundwater basin, as well as water that goes down the Santa Ana River and percolates and fills our groundwater basin. That groundwater basin, because of the drought, because we've been importing less water, the groundwater levels are significantly declining to historic lows. So the groundwater levels where we pump our wells, we're seeing are dropping significantly. And that's why the Orange County Water District, who regulates how much water pumpers like Anaheim, Fullerton, Santa Ana can take out of there, are asking us to cut back by 425 million gallons this year, so that those water levels don't keep dropping. Any other question on water supplies? Yeah.
Are there reservoirs to catch the rainwater before it goes into the ocean, or how are you capturing that?
So as I mentioned, we rely on a very complex network to get water here. So the imported water that we get from the falls in the Colorado River Basin, almost everything gets captured in reservoirs there if it rains. And so Colorado River, although it's in a drought, is not in as bad a shape as the water that we get from the state. The state, we only have 3 reservoirs for the whole state. So there's very little storage in the state. So the rain that we got this winter, a lot of it went right out to the ocean. Whereas that's why we rely on the snowpack to fill those reservoirs slowly over the spring. Here and locally, when we get rain, we capture everything. We have Prado Dam, where we capture water behind Prado Dam, store it there, and release it slowly, and then we fill the Anaheim lakes. So if you know where Ball Road and the Santa Ana River are, Ball Road and the 57, any water that falls above that and goes into the river, we capture it. We let it soak into the groundwater table, and we're able to use that water. Any water that falls south of Ball Road goes out to the ocean. We don't capture it. Yes?
425 million.
What's that?
Percentage.
2%.
That's only 2%.
2%, which is only 2%, but that's a lot of water. It's a lot of water. Yes?
This is probably a really stupid question. What's in the reservoirs that are in, off of Villarreal? There's 2 off of Villarreal. There's a reservoir up here, just off of Anaheim Hills Road, I think. What's in there?
You're talking about the open reservoirs?
Well, no, these 2 are closed.
Oh, the steel reservoirs, those are our reservoirs. We have in East Anaheim, we have a dozen reservoirs that we use to hold water, fire protection, for emergency storage in case we have a severe main break, and also we use that to balance our daily demands as the peaks and everyone turns on the showers and sprinklers and balances. So those reservoirs are filled with very little water compared to how much water we use every day. We on average use, in 2 days, we use enough water to fill entire Anaheim Stadium from the field level to the rim of the stadium. That's how much water we use in 2 days.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We had a water main break, and it took them 3 hours to come out to stop it up. Why does it take so long?
Depending on where the valves are and how close they are to the break, depends on how big the pipeline is, depends how long it may. Even though we may shut the water main off quickly, it may take hours for the water to drain out if it's come downhill, to drain out. So it depends on the size of the line and how much of an area we have to close to isolate that piece of pipe.
They were working on Tustin Avenue below Riverdale on Monday, and on Wednesday, we had three, two on Valley Forge, and one in the housing trust behind. Something about the unequal pressure, I mean, because they were working on Tustin Avenue, it took 2 days.
Yes.
And 2 days later, they blew three all at once.
Hold on,
4:30 in the afternoon.
maybe afterwards I talk a little bit more about how we respond to those pipe breaks. But let me continue on with this.
Can I ask one more question?
One more question.
Okay. What is the state doing long-term to address only 3 dams and I think it's 1.2 or 1.3 trillion gallons of water flowing into San Francisco Bay? And that's what equal to 600,000 people. 600,000 people of water per year.
Right.
So are they building dams or?
Let me get to the long-term water
Because
supply.
this is, you've got to react, but what are we
We
doing
do.
to prevent this in the future?
I want to, let me get through the presentation on the water restrictions and how it affects the HOAs. And I'll be around as long as you guys want to talk about water resources or our distribution system. So what we're doing is we passed on May 19th a new ordinance, we revised our ordinance to conserve water. But the city, as you mentioned, has already done a lot of things ahead of that to conserve water. We've done, one of the biggest complaints we hear when we come out with these mandates is, well, the city is the biggest user of water anyways, what are they doing? Well, here's some of the things that we've been doing in the last couple of years. I'm sorry about blocking you guys. In the last couple of years to conserve water. And each department, whether it's the Parks Department, the Fire Department, our Public Works Department, the Convention Center, have all implemented different projects to save water throughout the city. So this is the new water reduction ordinance that we came out with. We came out with, I'm going to move so you guys can see, 4 plans that we came out with. And on the left here are the restrictions, and on going down over to the right are the different plans. Plans 1 through 4. Depending on the severity of the drought, we choose which plan we're in. You see plan 1 is voluntary, plan 2, 3, and 4 are mandatory restrictions. We're in plan 3 of our water reduction plan. Plan 3 includes all those items, which is no irrigation runoff from the property, hose must have shut-off nozzles, all those, plus 2 days a week, only 2 days a week watering. That's the big one for outdoor irrigation, 2 days a week watering. If we go into an emergency, then we would go to the next plan, which would be plan 4. Yes.
So on the previous slide, you said we're in the highest stage of the drought emergency.
We're in the previous slide, we're in the highest
Level.
44% of the state
Right.
is in the highest level of drought.
Right. So I guess what's the criteria to decide extreme versus emergency?
Depending on where you are in the state, depends on how that drought has affected your water supply. Here in Orange County, we've been significantly impacted, but not nearly as much as areas in the Central Valley, California, that don't have groundwater wells, deep groundwater wells like we have, that haven't planned and don't have a reservoir like Walnut Canyon Reservoir up here in Anaheim Hills. But we've done some things planned for it. So it's not impacting us right now as bad as it is some other areas. You'll see on the news, you see people carrying bottled water to the house because they run out of water. Their wells weren't as deep. So that's where we're at here in Anaheim. We're able to choose what level of impact we have. And this is the level of impact, the level of the restrictions that we've implemented right now.
I have a question.
And that information is on our website. As I just plugged something, sorry. And it's also on our tip cards here.
And you're gonna give us some of those pictures?
Yes, yeah, these here. So these are on the table over there. And I'll get this back on. And
I know, I just seen that one.
so this plan that we're in will reduce the, let's see what this will 2 days a week watering. If your address for homes, and this is for homes or businesses, not necessarily for HOAs, it ends, if your address ends in an odd number, your watering days are Tuesday and Saturday. Ends in an even address, your number ends in an even number, it's Sunday and Thursday are your watering days. And that's at nighttime. You're allowed nighttime irrigation. And you are allowed 8 minutes per station unless you have drip, bubblers, or water efficient microsprays are allowed a longer period of time. So normal sprinkler heads are 15 minutes per station.
Can you restate those dates and times of the dealer?
Yeah, they're on these cards, and
HOAs.
I won't expect you to memorize or run down. We have plenty of information. They're all over here.
What do you mean by HOAs, not necessarily?
Well, HOAs don't necessarily have a physical street address like a home or a business. So with the HOAs, we're asking them to choose a 2-day pattern and either choose the Tuesday, Saturday, or choose the Thursday, Sunday.
Okay, and when you say Tuesday, Saturday, do you mean starting Friday night at midnight and finishing at Saturday night at midnight?
Nighttime irrigation only.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but
But you have it out.
starting midnight on Friday night, which
Oh.
is Saturday, and then not watering after 7 to midnight on Saturday? Or do you mean starting at 7 on Saturday, going into Sunday morning?
Going
Because-
from 9 p.m. Saturday night to 6 a.m. Sunday morning.
Okay, so it's, and you
Yeah.
pick those days because if you have a stuck valve on in an association, somebody might not necessarily notice it, and it might run for hours, whereas if, and by the time they do call, you might have a landscaper who's down south that has to come back and shut it off.
Right. Yeah, we can talk about how we're gonna monitor and monitor that. Any other questions on the water restrictions or the watering days? Yes.
So under restrictions, if I read it right, you get 2 days, 8 minutes for each area. So most likely your lawn is gonna start to turn brown.
Your lawns in the heat of summer will be brown, yes, throughout the whole city.
So you guys need to talk to, this is from my homeowner association that says, it doesn't matter what Anaheim says.
We'll get to that.
Right.
Next question.
Could you explain any details about the exemption for drip irrigation?
Yeah, so if you have high efficiency nozzles, if your HOA or residents, high efficiency nozzles, ones that rotate, and we have a list of those through our website or SoCal Water Smart, they're about 15 minutes. If you have water, the drip irrigation, not bubblers, but drip irrigation, they're exempt because they require much longer hours to water. They're allowed to water indefinitely on their watering days at night. Yes.
So like a soaker hose, that's a form of drip irrigation?
Okay, that would be a bubbler.
That's
Soaker, yeah.
considered a bubbler?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the bubble, the exemption for drip irrigation, you can talk to us after if you have a question. Well, is it water efficient or is it not? John and Dennis, wherever they're at, I saw them here. They'll be able to talk to you about what qualifies. What
Okay, got it.
Any other questions on the watering days or restrictions? Yes.
Yes.
Again.
I heard two things, or one thing versus this card. The nighttime period, span of hours, would it be 9 p.m. through 6 in the morning? Or this card makes it sound like. I think you unplugged it, honey.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. There's no watering 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's what I was going to say. No water 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's about a third of it.
My other question is, all of this chart of days, when you have an entire community with numbers both odd and even, but they're on the same valve.
HOAs are different. HOAs are going to pick which days they're going to do.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yes. Any other question? There's a question over here. Water restriction, water days. Boy, how do I keep knocking that out?
That's what I was saying, knock it down again.
I'm going to stop moving around.
No, you don't.
All right. Yes.
We have all of our houses on one side of the state are all even, and on the other side they're odd, they don't all same. And most of them have water and fences and things. And most of them water 2 days a week now, but if your neighbor wants to water that same day, the water actually goes through, as you know, straight through the dam, through the wrought iron fence, it almost gets too wet because it's opening the two houses. So we're just gonna have to go house by house and tell them personally to alternate the process.
Well, the water restriction, one of the restrictions, if you remember seeing back there, is no runoff. So, yeah, if you're watering so much, water is running off onto the sidewalk or into the gutter,
I'm not
that's
talking
how
about
it's.
I'm talking between houses. They're like patio homes, and there's
Mhm.
wrought iron fences in the backyard that run between the houses. The water doesn't run off, it just goes into each other's.
Maybe, yeah, and we can talk about that a little bit later too. And the idea of why we're doing 2 days a week watering is we don't want the surge on our water pipelines or water distribution system where everyone's watering on the same day throughout the whole city. Any other questions with the restrictions? Yes?
Is spot watering still exempted from?
Spot watering is okay if you're establishing new plants. Primarily, the idea is if you're planted drought-tolerant plants, we realize that that's going to require more than 2 days a week water to get those drought-tolerant plants, the succulents, to get them to grow. So spot water with the hose is acceptable for those new plants.
What about trees?
And trees, yes,
Okay.
yes. And one of the goals of this statewide is not to kill trees with this. And so we're hoping people put in, here in the city in our medians, we're redoing the irrigation system around trees to put in drip so that we don't damage trees. Yes.
I live in Anaheim Hills, and we have slopes that are, watered. Now, with the restrictions like that, have you guys thought about how do we prevent slope failures?
We'll talk a little bit about the fire protection. Slope failures, if these are
Rodents and everything else?
if these are existing slopes, the plants have been established already. And so the trees, the large trees are well, we don't want to sacrifice the large trees that have grown in for slope protection or around the city, or even in the median. Yeah. All right, let me move on. So the enforcement of this is a big question. I'm a homeowner, I'm a homeowner association. How are you gonna enforce this? What are we gonna do? Well, we set up we have to, the state has required us, I better stop moving. Sorry if you guys get blocked, I'll try to move. The state is required not only that we implement these mandatory restrictions, but also that we enforce them. And you may have read in the paper how some cities throughout California have had these mandatory measures in place for years, but haven't had to pass out any fines. The governor and the state says, no, not you. You must enforce these and make sure homeowners are complying with them. We don't want some cities doing it, some cities not. So we've implemented a 3-step process to try and get the homeowners educated and make sure they comply. The first time we get called out, and we're going to get called out by homeowners calling on homeowners, by us seeing different things going on in a myriad of ways. We have apps on our the My Anaheim app. We have a website. People will be calling us with information. As we get those calls, we're going to go out. We have Dennis and John. As John is Dennis. We're going to go out and meet with the homeowners or the HOA or the business and explain to them, hey, we have these water reduction and these measures. Here's some information. Here's your watering days, and let them know. And then they'll go back. And that's the courtesy warning. The next time we get notified, we then will have code enforcement go out, and they'll give you a civil warning. And then if they get called out a third time, they will assess fines. And then we have to report every month how many warnings we give and how many fines we give in the city. That's what the state is out. It wants us to notify them with. Any questions on our enforcement process?
Are you going to monitor water usage of the fields? Is the way to do this?
No, we're not. What we're asking people to do is we're asking people to comply with those restrictions that were on the previous slide. That's what we're asking you to do. We're trying to keep this very simple. If residences and HOAs reduce their irrigation days to 2 days a week, and we realize turf will be sacrificed, turf will turn brown. If they reduce to 2 days a week, that will result in the 20% reduction that we're being required to do. Yes?
In regards to overspray, like the wet pavement, like you've pictured there, is that going to be judged? Because like I live in a really large HOA where there's lots and lots and lots of sprinkler stations, and are they going to be judged like by group, the whole entire HOA as one unit, or each sprinkler head and how it's doing? Like how is that going to be judged?
The overspray will be if it's running off the property, off the irrigation, onto a hardscape and into the gutter. If we're wasting water, we're trying to prevent water from being wasted.
That's pretty tough, because we changed some of the sprinklers, cut down on the water, but you still get a little, I live by Tustin and Riverdale, so it goes down to the,
We realize a lot, when we're irrigating slopes, it's going to be hard to get penetration. We have very clay soils out here in this part of town to get the penetration without getting runoff. We realize that we're asking you to do your best job.
We don't get as much as we used to.
If you cut back to 8 minutes per station for the irrigation and you're watering in your 2 days, even if you get a little runoff, we're not gonna, we're gonna look at your timers. If we see runoff, we'll ask you, hey, are you watering too much? Are you watering on the wrong days? And we're not gonna fine you if you have runoff because you're watering on a slope.
So, yeah, okay.
We're gonna work with you guys on these, as long as you're doing your best effort to comply with these restrictions.
You said you use 91 gallons per day. What's the Pareto of watering landscape versus toilet versus whatever? Have you done that, or do you know what it is?
Back up, the goal of this program is not to fine people. Let me just make that clear. The goal of this program is to try and comply with the 20% reduction that we're being required to do by the state.
And educate.
And educate, get people to change their water habits while we're in this drought. The question was 91 gallons per person per day. What's the breakup of that for indoor versus outdoor use?
Yeah, Pareto, how much is it for, is that 91 specifically on a per person outside of what's landscaping, or is it an aggregate? And if it's an aggregate, we're talking about landscaping primarily, but is that the major user of water?
56% of the city is residential housing, single family, multifamily. Of that, 50% of the water usage is for outdoor irrigation on average. Depends on how big your lot is.
56%.
Is residential water usage, single family, multifamily homes. Of that, 50% of that water usage is for outdoor irrigation.
Is there any way you can tell the residents that they can't wash their cars without going through this, your CCNRs?
These restrictions right now that we have are focused on outdoor irrigation. That's where we feel we can get the biggest quick response to this drought by limiting outdoor irrigation. Other measures, we're asked filling pools, washing cars in your driveway, on and on and on, are things we may consider adding on down the road. But we're starting with this. There's another question over here.
Well, that question maybe it helped two people who were talking about water running down the front. We went to dropping our cars, doing it twice.
Sure. You have 8 minutes. You don't have to water all eight minutes at once. You could do 4 minutes or 4 minutes, or 2 minutes 4 times during the night. Any other questions on the enforcement or the restrictions? Yes.
How is Disneyland going to adhere to this?
We'll get to
I'm sure
that.
we'll go ahead.
I just have a question on the two types of sprinklers you mentioned earlier. The one type is 8 minutes, the other type is 15 minutes.
If you can talk to Dennis or John afterwards, and there's another question on that, on the type of sprinklers and what, are they 15 minutes, 8 minutes, unlimited? John or Dennis can answer that question. One thing I went over, I didn't go over in one of the slides was the alternative compliance plan. For large landscape irrigations, and this includes homeowner associations that have more than 3 acres of landscape area, and there's some of them here in that room, they're eligible if they use weather-based irrigation controllers to control their irrigation stations, they're able to apply for an alternative compliance plan. And that includes, hopefully answers your question. So large users like Disney, like the City Parks Department, the Public Works Department, the ones that have more than 3 acres of irrigation are able to apply for this. And what they're saying is we're going to conserve 20% water in other ways in lieu of being limited to those 2 days a week irrigation. So our Public Works Department, for example, they're stopped irrigating all the turf in the center medians. That results in about 17% water reduction for Public Works. Public Works irrigates all the center medians and other facilities throughout the city. They're going to come up with another 3% in other ways, but it's going to allow them to water more than 2 days a week to keep certain facilities green. Same with the Parks Department. You're going to notice up here at Sycamore Park or some of the other parks in the city, you're going to notice parts of the park, especially on the fringe, are going to be brown, because they've submitted an alternative compliance plan that states that they're going to cut back, reduce irrigation, and sacrifice some of the fringe of the parks to keep the functional, usable areas of the park green and usable throughout this drought. So those are the alternative compliance plans that we're now receiving, and we've brought those alternative compliance plans. Al, where did Al go? There it is. And now has these alternative compliance plans for those HOAs that have more than 3 acres that are interested in doing that. Now again, you've got to come up with that 20%, and that'll allow you to keep some areas greener, but sacrifice other areas. So Al will have those sheets for you. You can see him afterwards. Any other questions on the restrictions?
So have they thought about fire hazards with all these driving?
We have. We're going to get into that. That's why we
Oh,
have
okay.
deputy fire marshals here.
Okay, all right.
We're almost there.
You had talked about the spray on the sprinkler heads and everything. Did you gonna adjust that so that they're not, if you're not spraying towards the street, you have them spray to the parking?
Yes, and we can help you. We can help you come up with those ideas. Dennis and John have that expertise. John, where's your hand again? Dennis, raise your hand. John and Dennis, they can help talk to you and your landscape contractor with ideas. Let me keep going on, because I know some of you gotta go. I want to get everyone out of here by 7:30. Our incentive programs. So there are things that we're doing that we've offered for years, and some for the last year to help you meet our water conservation goals. One of them is our turf removal rebate program. HOAs and commercial users are eligible for $1 a square foot to remove turf and the irrigation system that goes with it, and put in drought-tolerant landscaping, up to a $25,000 per year max per HOA. Residences are allowed $2 per square foot, up to a $6,000 max. And so you must replace your old irrigation system, and that is, you may have read about that in the paper last week. That was just approved, that budget was just expanded, where now we budgeted up to $500 million in the last year to fund this program with the other water agencies in Southern California. $500 million. That program is dependent on available funding. I'm not sure how long it'll last. It'll last at least a few months, but don't wait too long if you're interested in participating in the turf removal program. And you can go to our website, which is on all the handouts you have.
How many times can you apply for the rebate?
As long as every year you can apply per HOA, one time per HOA for that year. Then you gotta wait till the next year and apply again.
Is that the June, February, or January?
It's 1 year from the date you apply, I believe. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah. Or 1 day from that time your application was accepted, one or the other. All right. Now, one of the things we just added on May 19th, was an assistance program to that. So we've heard from some homeowners and small businesses that the cost of replacing the turf is more than what I get from our rebate, and I have difficulty paying for that difference. So we're offering a zero-interest loan up to $5,000 for residences and up to $10,000 for HOAs to cover that difference between what they get in rebates and the actual cost of that turf removal program. And that would be paid back over 24 months on the utility bill, and that's a zero-interest loan. And we're one of the only agencies we are the only agency in Southern California that offers this program. And we really did this because we really want to help the customers meet, that want to do something to help meet the 20% reduction to be able to do that. Yes?
On the previous slide, you mentioned residents and HOAs. How does the resident cover multi-family?
No, the residents with the apartment complex or the HOA that manages it would be an HOA. That'd be the $1 square.
Okay, so a multi-unit would be considered a HOA portion?
It depends on where the water bill is. If the water bill is to an individual, then they can apply. If the water bill is to the association with like an apartment complex or condo complex, that would be an HOA. Yes?
I'm monitoring this with the billing system. How are you gonna let the HOAs know? Right now, it's a two-month cycle, so how are you gonna inform us as to how we're performing?
We are not, as I mentioned earlier, we are not monitoring your water bill to see how much water you're using.
But the consumption too.
We're not monitoring your consumption. What we're monitoring is, are you complying with these fairly straightforward restrictions of 2 days a week watering?
Okay.
No runoff, nighttime irrigation only. That's what we're monitoring, not your daily water bill. Now, if your HOA applies for an alternative compliance plan that you can get from Al,
Okay.
then you're stating that we're gonna reduce 20% of our water, then we're gonna monitor your water consumption.
Gotcha.
And in your alternative compliance plan, you state which areas or which meters are part of that alternative compliance plan. And we're gonna monitor that on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And are you gonna give the rebates for removing turf and putting in concrete or putting in bake grass?
There's restrictions on what you can do, what kind of drought tolerant landscaping, or what you can do with the turf removal program. There's a lot of information on our website. There's a good video that shows you what's allowed. It must comply with the city's planning department and certain restrictions on what percentage of hardscaping or concrete you can have versus landscaping that you can have. So those are on our website, and if you're interested, you might want to go there.
Artificial grass is not included.
What's that?
Artificial grass.
Synthetic grass is included.
Okay.
Yep, as part of that program. That you can put in synthetic turf.
The web address Mike is referring to is right on the bottom of your handout that we gave you right there. So if you want to take a look, it's all right.
One thing we've also been contacted by a lot of residences and HOAs, which is, well, how do the turf removal program affect us if I live in an HOA and they determine my landscape requirements? They set those. There was several bills that have been passed last year during this drought that directly address this, and I'll let your HOAs and their attorneys, communicate this to their residences. But in general, HOAs are not allowed, according to these bills, to restrict them in certain ways and restrict homeowners from conserving water, reducing their water usage, or putting in drought-tolerant landscaping during a drought. There's also a bill that's proposed, looks like it's going to pass sometime this year also, regarding allowing residences to put in synthetic turf.
Yeah, because somebody got fined.
So we get asked this all the time. This is an issue between the HOAs and the residences. I just want to point out that there are state bills and state laws that dictate this. I want to talk now, we have Deputy Fire Marshal here, that talk about the maintaining the landscape wildland and urban interface. Most of our HOAs, as you can see here, are in, these little dots represent the HOAs that we have in East Anaheim. Most of our, 90% of our HOAs are in this area. This area in the red is what we consider our wildland urban interface area. And there's certain restrictions that we have where we try and maintain landscaping and a buffer between the wildland and that urban area. We see pretty much entire East Anaheim is included in that. This is the defensible space requirement that we, as Anaheim, try to enforce with every homeowner and every structure that we maintain out there. We maintain a area 30 feet. I know it's hard to see here from the structure. We try immediately outside surrounding the house. We try and keep that cleared. We try and keep that with an irrigation system, and we really want to promote people to put in drought-tolerant landscaping, succulents that are fire resistant, but also don't require a significant amount of water. They can survive on 2 days a week. We really encourage homeowners to put in that landscape in that area. But if not, 2 days a week watering of your existing landscaping, keeping everything trimmed, is adequate for that defensible zone.
And to add what Michael's saying, in your defensible space there, what we try to advocate is to harden your home. And there's several ways of doing that. Like Michael's saying, create that 30-foot defensible space. We understand as a fire department with the water restrictions, everything's not going to be lush and green. We understand that. So now we need to move and be flexible to more drought-tolerant plants, succulents, things like that, and kind of be smarter on what we do. Brown grass that turns brown, that you like see, it isn't going to affect a wildfire, so to speak. So what we want to do is, if something dies on the HOA on the hillsides, when our inspectors are out in your area, they'll ask you to remove the dead brush, and then for soil erosion to replace it with drought-tolerant plants for when the winters, hopefully we get our rains, and it will help maintain the soils. If you'd like any more information on that, I will be here also later. I can give you my email address and phone number. I'll be more than happy to send you out information. In a couple more slides here, you're going to see a web site that you can go to that's put out by the county that gives probably, I think it's like 2 pages of recommended fire-resistant, drought-tolerant planting. that we can use for landscaping.
The, last thing, so the first zone is that defensible zone area. Outside that, 70 feet outside of that, or 100 feet from that structure, we ask that just the existing landscaping, whatever's there, native or whatever it is, just be trimmed low, 3 inches or less, I believe.
And that's to your property line. If your house sits and your property line is only 30 feet, then that's where you go to. You go to 30 feet. You don't have to go traipsing down the hill for the other 70 feet to try to clear it. It's to your property line. A lot of people misunderstand that, and they have that 100-foot set in their mind, and they just want that 100 foot. And that's not what the intent of that is. It's just, this breaks up the different types of zones. In the other zone, we start trimming up from the bottom. We do spreading, because out here in the hills, we also have regulations of, there's some plants and stuff out there, California sage, that by requirements because of gnatcatcher and wildlife that use this, we can't touch. We can't touch it. So apparently, obviously that's why some of you people moved out to the hills to enjoy the wildlife and the natural beauty of what the hills have to offer. So it's our goal to balance that act of maintaining that and still provide a safe buffer zone where the firefighters can work to help save and protect your homes and property.
Question?
Yes, sir.
You showed the 30 feet, the first defense line. So all you guys promoting artificial turf, but this is not fire resistant, is it?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't know if artificial turf is fire resistant.
They are not, that's more plastics recycled.
I honestly don't know.
It should melt.
It's not gonna, I can tell you it's not gonna, if it does burn, believe me, in a wildland fire, unfortunately I've had to deal with them. Most of your heat is radiant heat up from above. When they teach us, if you get in a compromising position, is to lay down on the ground with just a little thin piece that looks like tin foil, and because all the heat's up above. So that's what generates in the treetops, we call it fuel laddering. So if the artificial grass were to catch fire, it's not really going to go anywhere. It's not going to do anything. It's moving so quickly and high.
Yes, in the back.
If I understood what you said about this 100-foot zone, you wanted everything cut down to 3 inches?
Outside the defensible area, cut down to 3 inches to your property line.
So you have no bushes higher than 3 inches?
No, what he's talking about is referring to like invasive weeds, stuff like that. The shrubbery and stuff like that, we just actually just like the grass and stuff around it, just trim it and clear it around it.
Yes.
Could you define again what this applies to as far as the area of Anaheim? If it's just the areas that border on those wildlands, or if it's any other areas?
Basically what this is showing you is everything east of the 55 freeway and everything south of the 91. That's considered the wildland urban interface area. And that is dictated by factors of topography, wild intervention, and that comes down from the state. They identify that, and then they put restrictions of things that we do, building, like when you build a new home in that area, there's certain building criteria that you have to meet. Class A roofs, double pane windows, vents, spark arresters on your chimneys, things like that, that the building code requires you to do if you're going to build in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
That's nowhere near us, right?
That's nowhere near us, right?
And
that's not near us.
What that is and I'm sure that's going to come up, what that is, again, what I was talking about earlier, that is what we call open land. It's a Natural Resource Act, it's open land. Again, like as you look across the valley and there's a dead tree sitting or in a pocket or whatever like that, there is no requirements to go out and start cutting down the dead tree. It's part of the natural habitat. It's called open space.
So let's say we got about 10 more minutes. That's the.
This is, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Can you go back one more? I'm sorry. This upload, that's the guide to, you guys can download the drought tolerant planting and fire resistant planting that you can interface in your home planting to compensate for the water restriction.
And we'll put this on this presentation with that link on our website, which is at the bottom of our cards that we're giving you. So what we talked about today, just wanted to recap, the water restrictions, 2 days per week, 8 minutes per station. Large irrigation users can apply to go on to an alternative compliance plan that you can pick up either on our website, you can download on our website, or you can pick a hard copy up from Al right now. The turf removal program is acceptable, so anyone in the city can apply for it, whether they're in a HOA or not, and there's state laws that discuss that I pointed out. The city is doing a lot of things to cut back on irrigation. You're going to notice, the biggest thing that homeowners are going to notice are the center medians that go brown, and the parkways, the HOAs that maintain the parkways and the adjacent areas to the curb are green. And we're going to notice those also. And we're going to then question, are you watering on your 2 days a week and 8 minutes per station? So those are the things that are going to notice immediately. We've already stopped watering on medians. So in a matter of a couple of weeks, the medians that go up Weir Canyon, that go down Santa Ana Canyon, that turf will be turning brown and will be noticeable throughout the city. And lastly, residences can maintain, even here in the urban wildland interface area, can maintain the defensible area, meet the fuel modification requirements, even with these restrictions. There's a lot of questions on, well, what is turf, what rebate programs, what are drought tolerant bubblers and micro sprays, what else can I do? We have a water expo on June 6th, it's a Saturday, 2 Saturdays from now, at the Arctic, which is the new transportation center right next to the Honda Center. And it is, and we're gonna have a lot of information. All of us will be there. We'll have Toro, Rainbird, Lowe's will be there. A lot of Armstrong nurseries will be there, demonstrate drought tolerant landscaping. And if you want more information, this is the best place to come and meet us and talk to us. As it's free, and there's gonna be giveaways and things for kids also there. So that's June 6th, and hopefully you guys all got this flyer. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And there's more information on our website too. So we have about 5 minutes, and I'll be staying around as long as you guys want with questions. One more thing is, as you can saw from the map, we have over 100 HOAs in the city, and we realize they're not all here. Is there anyone from the Master Homeowners Association here? Okay, so we ask that you guys, that's right, that you guys share this information with all the HOAs if you can, at least to our website, and provide that information to them, because I realize they're not all here. So, any other questions? Deputy Fire Marshal Hogue will be here, I'm here, Dennis and John are also here to answer your questions. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Now it's just